Forget everything you learned from Hollywood. Today, we're digging up the real story of pirates, one wilder than any blockbuster. You know the pirate flag, the skull and crossbones whipping in the wind. You probably picture a swaggering captain, a motley crew yelling "Arrr!" and a battered treasure map where X marks the spot. But what if nearly everything you think you know about pirates is a Hollywood illusion? And the real story is wilder, stranger, and in some ways, shockingly familiar. Today, archaeologists are rewriting pirate history by pulling up sunken shipwrecks, lost ports, and surprising artifacts from the ocean floor. These discoveries show that beneath the decks, pirate life was about more than plunder. Pirates built their own rules, welcomed global crews, and even invented new forms of democracy, centuries before such ideas were mainstream. In many ways, their floating societies weren't just about rebellion, but about experimenting with freedom, identity, and equality in ways that still echo in today's world. This is Armchair Archaeology, and together we're challenging the myths behind the pirate legend. Stay with us, because by the end, you'll witness a real pirate artifact so unexpected, so real, it'll force you to rethink everything you thought you knew about pirates. Before we dive in, if you love discovering the real stories behind the world's most mysterious legends, subscribe and join our crew. There's always something unexpected waiting just below the surface.
From blockbuster movies to Halloween costumes, pirates have become pop culture's favorite outlaws. The classic images everywhere: a tricorn-hatted captain, a squawking parrot, and a treasure chest buried on a deserted island. This brand of piracy is so deeply rooted that it's easy to forget it was manufactured, piece by piece, by storytellers and Hollywood scriptwriters, not by history. The pirate myth took centuries to take shape, blending fact and fiction at every turn. Victorian authors like Robert Louis Stevenson gave us the infamous treasure map and the now iconic X marks the spot. Early illustrators painted pirates as both villains and charming rogues. And by the 20th century, Hollywood added the finishing touches: eyepatches, flamboyant accents, squawking parrots, and endless bottles of rum. And that famous pirate Arrr, it didn't come from dusty ship logs. It was dreamed up by actor Robert Newton in a 1950 film. Over time, his performance became what everyone thinks is the authentic pirate voice, echoed in playgrounds and at costume parties everywhere. But archaeology tells a more nuanced and much more fascinating story. Artifacts recovered from real pirate ships don't match the fantasy. The so-called Jolly Roger wasn't the only flag flown. Some captains raised red banners or unique designs to send different messages. Buried treasure was a rarity. Most pirates spent their loot quickly, and shipwrecks rarely yield chests of gold. It's a pattern that feels familiar today. Stories go viral, and myths become truth through repetition. Just as memes and social media can create new legends overnight, so too did old pamphlets, plays, and novels build the pirate image we know. Archaeology is now pulling back the curtain, letting us see the real rebels and risk-takers behind the mask. And what's being uncovered is more surprising than any script.
The popular picture of pirates, a band of white sailors under a British captain, couldn't be further from the truth. Step onto a pirate ship in the early 1700s, and you'd be stepping into one of the most diverse workplaces of the time. Archaeologists excavating shipwrecks like the Whydah Galley have uncovered a jumble of artifacts: West African beads beside Irish clay pipes, Spanish coins mixed with Chinese ceramics. Each object is a clue to the backgrounds of the people who sailed together under the Black Flag. Historical records reveal that pirate crews were often made up of freed slaves, escaped indentured servants, indigenous Caribbeans, and outcasts from Europe and Asia, people who'd been pushed to the margins by the societies they fled. Bartholomew Roberts, one of the most notorious pirate captains, sailed with a crew that defied all the stereotypes. On board, old social rules often fell away. Some ships, like the one commanded by Bartholomew Roberts, included crews where more than half the men were of African descent, and where sailors from wildly different backgrounds made decisions together and shared the risks and the rewards. Unlike the strict racial divisions and iron-fisted authority of naval or merchant vessels, pirate ships could be surprisingly democratic. Officers and captains were often chosen by vote, and sometimes a black or mixed-race sailor would be elected to a position of real power. Pirate articles, the written rules of the ship, could guarantee equal shares and even medical care long before such rights were common on land. This radical approach was more than just a matter of survival. In some ways, it mirrors how today's cities, tech companies, and creative communities thrive on diversity and cooperation. Archaeology keeps turning up the small personal belongings, amulets, coins, hand-carved trinkets that remind us pirate crews were truly global, decades before the world itself would claim to be.
Let's talk about how pirates ran their ships, not with tyranny, but with votes. Most of us picture pirate ships as chaotic free-for-alls with power in the hands of a ruthless captain. Yet history and archaeology tells a story far closer to today's grassroots movements and startup culture than to tyranny. On many pirate ships, democracy ruled the waves. Unlike naval or merchant ships where captains wielded near absolute power and harsh discipline, pirate crews created systems where everyone had a voice. Captains and quartermasters, the second in command, responsible for discipline and sharing loot, were elected by majority vote, and the crew could replace them if they failed to deliver. Pirate articles, written contracts recovered from shipwrecks and preserved in archives, outline the rights and responsibilities of each crew member, from voting to fair shares of plunder. These rules could cover everything from how to split loot, to what happened if you lost a limb, to how disputes should be settled. One set of articles, belonging to pirate captain John Phillips, even spelled out penalties for theft, cheating, or gambling on board. Sound a bit like a startup or your last group project? That's no accident. Every crew member had to agree by show of hands, a practice that feels surprisingly familiar in today's team meetings or democratic assemblies. Archaeological finds, like evenly divided loot and detailed written contracts, reinforce that this wasn't just talk. Pirates enforced fairness because their survival depended on it. Think about that. At a time when the most of the world was ruled by kings and emperors, pirates practiced a rough form of participatory government on the open sea. Their floating communities weren't just acts of rebellion, they were experiments in equality and collective power. It's a reminder that, even in the harshest conditions, people have found ways to demand a voice, an idea that still resonates in every protest, election, and community meeting today. If this glimpse into pirate democracy has you rethinking what you know, you'll find even more surprising stories in our new ebook, Secrets of the Ancient World. There are chapters inside that go way beyond pirates. Think ancient lost technologies, vanished civilizations, and mysteries still unsolved. If you're curious, the link's in the pinned comment. Hollywood paints pirate life as an endless party, rum flowing, wild feasts, and the thrill of the chase. The truth, as archaeology shows, was much grittier and closer to survival than celebration. Life on a pirate ship meant cramped quarters, relentless hard work, and constant risk. A reality that feels oddly familiar to anyone who's ever shared a tiny apartment or hustled in a gig economy. Pirate ships were packed, with hammocks slung inches apart and barely enough room to stretch out. The air was thick with the smells of sweat, gunpowder, and rotting food. Romantic, right? Probably not a scent you'd bottle for a perfume. Archaeologists have recovered lice combs, cracked clay pipes, and homemade gambling dice from shipwrecks. Small hints of how pirates coped with boredom and discomfort during long stretches at sea. The remains of goats, turtles, and chickens pulled from the silt show that pirate diets depended on whatever they could steal or catch. Hardly the romanticized image of roasted feasts. Fresh water was precious and often undrinkable by journey's end. So pirates mixed it with rum for safety, a practice not unlike people today who carry water filters or energy drinks for survival. Personal privacy barely existed. Pirates changed, slept, and worked shoulder to shoulder. Yet, even in these harsh conditions, small comforts and moments of community found a place. A carved bone whistle,
A well-worn boot or a child's shoe hint at music, stories, and maybe even families tucked among the crew. What stands out in the archaeological record is how pirates used written articles to divide the hardships and the rewards. Shares of loot were often given to those injured, and everyone knew the rules before setting sail. Pirate life was gritty, dangerous, and full of uncertainty, but it was also built on the hope for fairness and freedom that still drives people to risk everything for a better future. If you're enjoying these untold stories and want to help us uncover even more, consider leaving a super thanks. Every bit goes right back into researching and sharing the real history behind the legends.
When you hear pirate, the Caribbean probably leaps to mind. Sun-bleached islands, turquoise bays, and hidden ports. But the archaeological truth behind these legendary strongholds is stranger and more human than any Hollywood fantasy. Rather than pure chaos, the Caribbean's pirate havens were makeshift communities where rebels from across the world built new lives on their own terms. A story with echoes in modern refugee camps, countercultural communes, and even startup incubators. But pirate strongholds weren't just hideouts, they were real communities. Excavations at Nassau in the Bahamas and Tortuga off Haiti's coast have revealed the bones of these bustling pirate towns, foundations of taverns and blacksmith shops, hearths where food was shared, and wells where pirates and locals drew water side by side. Archaeologists uncover fragments of clay pipes, imported pottery, and animal bones, painting a picture of everyday survival, shared meals, and moments of celebration. Spanish coins, sometimes cut into jagged pieces of 8 for smaller purchases, show up in unexpected places, buried under floorboards or hidden deep in muddy wells. A quiet testament to a world where trust was rare and fortunes could shift overnight. These makeshift economies meant that almost anything could serve as currency or collateral. Merchants, pirates, and even colonial officials exchanged goods and coins with little care for origin, inventing a local system that blurred the line between legal and illegal. But these havens were never permanent. Colonial fleets, hurricanes, and betrayal constantly threatened these fragile societies. Underwater ruins at Port Royal, Jamaica, preserve the eerie outlines of a city destroyed in an instant. Dishes left on tables, dice scattered across tavern floors. The lives of pirates and townsfolk paused forever by disaster. The Pirate Caribbean wasn't just a land of wild outlaws. It was a laboratory of improvisation and survival, where communities rewrote the rules as quickly as the world changed around them, much like those seeking freedom and opportunity in turbulent times today. Long before the Caribbean's pirates grabbed headlines, the Mediterranean was the center of the world's most complex and enduring pirate networks. Along the coasts of North Africa, the Barbary Corsairs built powerful fleets, raided from Morocco to Italy, and forced the world's great empires to play by their rules. Archaeologists excavating old fortresses and sunken harbors have unearthed fixed stone walls, labyrinth and escape tunnels, and marketplaces bustling with goods from 3 continents, a vivid reminder that piracy here wasn't just about plunder, but about global commerce and diplomacy. Finds from these sites tell stories of remarkable cultural mix. Venetian glassware, Ottoman coins, and fragments of North African ceramics appear alongside personal items, dice, silver crosses, and prayer beads that belong to Christians, Muslims, and Jews who lived, traded, and sometimes fought together under Corsair rule. In the harbor of Madia, Tunisia, the wrecks of Corsair galleys have yielded clusters of these everyday objects, each a glimpse of lives shaped by risk, ambition, and shifting alliances. Unlike the often leaderless pirate gangs of the Caribbean, Barbary Corsairs sometimes sailed with the blessing or direct command of local rulers. This made the line between pirate and naval officer blurry, turning piracy into a tool of politics as much as profit. The impact rippled far and wide. European navies redesigned ships and tactics in response. New diplomatic treaties were hammered out, and even the young United States sent its navy to battle the Corsairs, a fight immortalized in the shores of Tripoli. The legacy of Mediterranean piracy still surfaces today in the silt of old ports and shipwrecks.
These discoveries remind us that piracy isn't just a footnote in history, it's a global phenomenon, shaped by power, culture, and the same need for survival and advantage that shapes the world's trade and politics now. The story of piracy didn't stop at the borders of Europe or the Atlantic. Some of the most ambitious and successful pirates operated in the vast, bustling waters of the Indian Ocean, where Asia, Africa, and the Middle East collided. Archaeological discoveries along the coasts of Madagascar, India, and Arabia are revealing a maritime world as cosmopolitan and cutthroat as any modern trading hub.
Now let's sail east, where the Indian Ocean was a hotbed for the world's most ambitious pirates. Shipwrecks off Ile Sainte-Marie, Madagascar, a notorious pirate hideout, contain a mix of English cannons, Indian jewelry, Swahili beads, and fragments of Ming porcelain. These scattered objects hint at a thriving pirate economy that connected empires centuries before globalization was a buzzword.
Pirates raided Portuguese galleons, Mughal treasure ships at Arabian dhows, their loot including coins stamped with imperial emblems and rare trade goods from every direction. What stands out is the diversity not just of goods, but of people. Pirate crews in the Indian Ocean could be European, African, South Asian, and Arab, sometimes in cooperation, sometimes in fierce rivalry. Alliances formed on the fly, with pirates striking deals with sultans, island kings, or local merchants, blurring the line between outlaw, entrepreneur, and naval officer. Some, like the infamous Henry Every, pulled off heists so massive they shook international politics and inspired both fear and imitation, scandals that echo in today's headlines about global financial crime. Artifacts like ornate Indian coins, Persian glass, and Chinese ceramics are proof of how piracy here fueled and disrupted international trade. Even in the age of empires, pirates found ways to exploit, challenge, and sometimes build their own power. Each new discovery in the Indian Ocean uncovers not just another shipwreck, but another thread in the story of how global networks and global outlaws helped shape the modern world. And if you love exploring hidden connections, pirates in the Indian Ocean, lost ports, ancient tech, you'll find a deep dive into all of it in Secrets of the Ancient World. The book brings together discoveries you won't hear about anywhere else. Check the pinned comment for the link.
Beneath the surface of the world's oceans lies the real, tangible legacy of piracy, one that only modern underwater archaeology can unlock. Every shipwreck is a snapshot, a messy freeze frame of lives interrupted by storm, battle, or betrayal. When archaeologists explore sites like Blackbeard's Queen Anne's Revenge off North Carolina, they find not just cannons and cutlasses, but an unvarnished record of daily survival. Pewter plates warped by heat, medical syringes for treating wounds, thimbles and gaming pieces tucked among tangled rigging. Every sunken ship is a pirate time capsule, packed with stories we're only now learning to read. Some discoveries are quietly profound. At the wreck of the Whitehall Galley off Cape Cod, gold and silver coins mingled with African trade beads, carved bone tools, and even a child's shoe, evidence of a ship's motley, multicultural crew and the children who sometimes found themselves at sea. The fragments of daily life, a battered comb, a tin cup dented from years of use, a scrap of embroidered fabric, tell us that pirate ships were more than floating fortresses. They were fragile communities, carrying hopes and heartbreaks beneath the black flag. Sometimes a single find upends what we thought we knew. Archaeologists have unearthed musket balls hastily recast from melted-down coins, handmade musical instruments, and even prosthetic limbs, revealing how pirates coped with injury and scarcity. Shipwrecks like Port Royal, preserved under the sea by disaster, capture the rush of ordinary life, dishes left mid-meal, cards scattered from a game interrupted, possessions lost in chaos. These objects, mundane or extraordinary, aren't just relics. They are the physical record of people who risked everything for freedom, fortune, or simply survival. Every artifact pulled from the deep adds another verse to the true ballad of piracy, bridging centuries and reminding us that the real story, like the sea itself, is always shifting, layered, and full of surprises.
Which pirate hotspot or ancient mystery fascinates you most? Drop your theories or questions in the comments. I love reading what you all think, and you might just inspire a future video.
Want to know what real pirates carried? Spoiler, it wasn't all swords and pistols. To understand pirates not just as legends, but as people, you have to look at what they carried, used, and left behind. The artifacts pulled from wrecks and ruins aren't just museum curiosities. They are the fingerprints of lives lived at the edge, improvising every day with whatever the sea or fortune provided. Pirates' weapons weren't always the ornate swords or flintlock pistols of the movies. Archaeologists have recovered everything from hacked-down muskets and homemade grenades to axes repurposed from shipbuilding tools. In a pinch, musket balls were recast from silver coins, blending necessity and ingenuity in a way any modern maker or survivalist would recognize. Many tools were scavenged, borrowed, or stolen from every corner of the world. A material record of global exchange long before globalization had a name. But pirate life wasn't just about violence. Shipwrecks yield up battered spoons, humble cooking pots, gambling dice, and hand-carved amulets. One pouch, recovered from a sunken hold, held both a West African charm and a European rosary. Two beliefs, side by side, carried for luck on a dangerous sea. Simple tattooing needles and bone whistles speak to boredom, creativity, and longing for identity in a life always on the move. Clothing, too, tells a story of resilience and resourcefulness. A patchwork shirt, a well-worn leather boot, a strip of silk scavenged from a captured ship. Each piece hints at the daily choices pirates made: what to keep, what to trade, and how to mark their place in a shifting world. In a sense, pirates' material culture was like today's global street style, a blend of necessity, personal flair, and borrowed symbols, pieced together from every culture they encountered. Each artifact adds depth to the story, revealing pirates as survivors, inventors, and above all, people finding meaning in the margins.
Pirates weren't just outlaws. They were disruptors whose actions rippled through global trade, law, and even the ways people thought about power and justice. Every artifact and city ruin they left behind helps tell a story of unexpected influence that still resonates in the modern world. When pirates struck at treasure fleets and merchant convoys, the shockwaves changed more than just a ship's fortunes. Silver coins plundered from Spanish galleons or Mughal treasure ships have surfaced thousands of miles away, repurposed as local currency, melted into musket balls, or hidden in secret caches. Ports once considered pirate dens, from Nassau to Madagascar, became early prototypes of globalized trade zones, with goods and people from every continent mingling in chaotic, ever-shifting markets, a phenomenon we still see in free ports and multicultural cities today. Think of them as the world's first free ports, places where rules were made up on the fly. Their impact reached into the law itself. Pirate articles, written rules enforced by votes, not birthright, laid out systems of leadership and compensation that stood in sharp contrast to the world's monarchies. The practice of voting on ship officers and dividing profits laid the groundwork for new ideas about fairness, echoed centuries later in labor unions, co-ops, and other grassroots movements. Courts and navies, forced to adapt, introduced new treaties and international patrols that laid the groundwork for today's global policing efforts. The story of pirates is more than stolen gold or sunken ships. It's found in the enduring idea that authority can be challenged and new societies built from the ground up. The spirit of resistance and reinvention that define pirate communities continues to echo in every movement that demands justice and rewrites the rules, reminding us that change often starts on the fringes, wherever people are bold enough to seize it.
At the start, we promised a pirate artifact so strange and so real it would force you to rethink everything you thought you knew. Here's that moment. In 2007, archaeologists exploring a pirate shipwreck off the coast of Madagascar made a discovery straight out of legend: a genuine wooden prosthetic leg. This wasn't a movie prop or a tall tale, but an actual hand-carved peg leg that belonged to a real pirate who survived battle and kept sailing. For generations, the image of a wooden-legged pirate seemed like pure fiction, but archaeology proved the story true. Real pirates sometimes wore the scars of their dangerous lives, adapting in ways as bold and resourceful as any action hero. Finds like this remind us that the truth is often wilder than the myth. Pirates weren't just one-dimensional villains or comic book anti-heroes. They were rebels, experimenters, and survivors. People who risked everything to build their own codes, sometimes centuries ahead of the societies that condemned them. And thanks to archaeology, their real stories are finally coming to the surface. If the reality of a pirate's peg leg surprised you, tell us in the comments which pirate myth you want busted next. Hit like if you enjoyed this journey, and don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you'll never miss a new adventure into the world's lost and found. This is Armchair Archaeology, where every artifact tells a story, and the past is always waiting to surprise us. Thanks for joining our crew. Until next time, keep asking questions and never stop digging.